I love this Newt Gingrich guy. He's great. Now, I would hate, now he was talking to somebody who used to be called a flip-flopper. I would hate to think that Newt Gingrich is now competing with John Kerry for the title of flip-flopper in chief.
No, not at all. The difference between a conversation, a debate that was in a Senate hearing room, talking about taking, I use the word effective steps.
Sure.
And suddenly elevating this. I'm happy to say this is a serious topic. We ought to debate seriously and look at things. To then elevate that to more important, remember, the phrase he uses is very clear. That's why the speech matters. It's not a press release. He says this could be the biggest mass threat to the planet.
Perhaps, he says.
Okay. It's just not true.
We're going to be fighting tonight, but we got some people here to help us get through this. In the Crossfire tonight, we have Joe Cicerone, who's a member of the Secretary Kerry's actual International Security Advisory Board. We also have Weekly Standard editor Bill Kristol. I'm going to go to you first, Bill. Don't you think that maybe Kerry went a bridge too far? Don't you think he's gone 15 bridges too far, saying the Secretary of State should resign over a line in a speech when John Kerry is out there trying to get peace in the Middle East and everything else he's doing?
Yeah, that peace in the Middle East is going great.
Well, but don't you think that this is a
one
bridge
reason
too
why
far?
it's not just delusional but offensive? Weapons of mass destruction have been used when John Kerry was Secretary of State. They were used by Bashar al-Assad. Secretary Kerry was very upset about this. Secretary Kerry said it was a unique moment. Secretary Kerry said we were going to go remove Assad and stop him from and destroy his weapons of mass destruction and prevent him from using them again. And then, of course, President Obama made a U-turn and we did nothing. And we have an agreement that's gotten a few, but not most of the chemical weapons out. And Assad is cheerfully in power. And 130,000 people are dead in Syria. And some of them are dead from weapons of mass destruction, from chemical weapons. And instead, John Kerry gives speeches about global climate change. It's ludicrous.
Well, first of all, I know that you're a critic of this administration. I know that you wish we had gone into war in Syria and a bunch of other places, but the Republican Party didn't support the president on a march to war. I'm asking you a specific question. Do you think that John Kerry, who has shown the kind of creativity and the kind of energy that he has shown, should lose his job because Newt Gingrich doesn't like a line in his speech?
I think he's a terrible Secretary of State.
Oh, my God.
He is terrible. My only concern about John, he's so farcical now with the peace process that's going nowhere, and a bad deal on nuclear weapons with Iran, an incredible flip-flop on Syria, this speech. My only worry is that if we keep criticizing John Kerry, people will decide that President Obama's first Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, was a little bit better, which she was. She did nothing. She had no accomplishments. She wasn't quite as delusional, and we will inadvertently help Hillary Clinton by highlighting just how bad John Kerry is. That's my only. That's my main concern.
I can tell you that.
Let me put you on the spot just a little bit.
Go.
Okay? Because the central premise of my criticism and the toughness of my reaction is that a Secretary of State is very different than a senator. In that a Secretary of State speaks for the most powerful nation in the world. This is at an international event in Indonesia. And presumably the speech had been thought through, written out. And I assume he's telling us what he honestly believes, that he honestly would rank global warming as a threat that could be the greatest single threat. Now, holding him to that standard, and then we can have an argument about whether or not that, as I said, is delusional. But isn't that the right approach to a Secretary of State speech, that this is a serious state document that is designed to inform both the world and our own State Department about our priorities?
You know that in the State Department, speeches like this are cleared by dozens of people. So clearly this was well thought out. I serve on an advisory board to the Secretary of State, but my comments here are strictly my own and don't represent the U.S. government, and they're always happy when I say that. There's no question that John Kerry is right on this issue.
That's right.
Last year, when the head of the Pacific Command was asked what our single greatest threat was, he said climate change. And the reason is that the military sees climate change as a multiplier. It makes dire situations worse. It threatens fragile countries. It kills crops. It floods cities. It can destroy nations. So John Kerry is absolutely right to be in Indonesia talking about this, because Jakarta is in danger of being drowned out if the floodwaters rise as much as the Army Corps of Engineers predicts they will by the end of the century, 5 feet. That could change the planet.
You think climate change is more dangerous than nuclear proliferation?
I'm on record as saying that nuclear weapons and climate change represent the two greatest threats to our civilization.
You think climate change is really as much of a threat as nuclear proliferation?
Climate change is slow-motion mass destruction. Nuclear weapons destroy instantly. Climate change can change our planet forever.
Why do you disagree with the Pentagon's assessment on this? Listen.
One general makes a politically correct statement, knowing that the administration has a deeply... Let me ask you this.
Yes.
1997, I believe there was a resolution in the United States Senate. Should there be binding limits, as Kyoto had suggested, the climate change agreement from, what was that, 92, on carbon emissions? 95 senators agreed that, no, the U.S. should sign no treaty with binding limits. One of those senators was John Kerry. Yeah. Now he's Secretary of State. He goes around the world. He's giving speeches. What is he doing? What is he doing? Well, is he putting any pressure on China or Russia to change their policies on climate change?
He just came from China.
Oh, and he's having a great effect.
But if you ask what he's doing, go ahead. Explain what he's doing.
Tell me how much influence, how much leverage he's really willing to use.
The science is rolling in. There's more and more agreement that this is a real threat to us, that this could fundamentally change geopolitics forever. Let me give you just one quick example where nuclear weapons and global warming come together. South Asia. 135 million people live in coastally threatened areas. If the sea change rise is even close to what experts predict, those people are going to throw that continent into chaos. There's 200 nuclear weapons in India and Pakistan. You think it's dangerous now? Wait 20 years. Wait 50 years.
50 years? Could we actually focus on the fact that Iran is getting a nuclear weapon in the next 2 or 3 years?
But we are focusing on that. We're not doing one or the other. He's doing always. This is just one speech, and I'm glad he gave it.
But let me stay on your version of reality. First, do you believe any commander would be appointed who said climate change didn't matter? In this administration, politically, it would be hopeless. So to have a senior officer say, I'm now going to repeat what the President of the United States wants me to repeat, doesn't overwhelm me.
Let me just challenge you on this. Hold on a second. The Pentagon's quadrennial review, which sets the policy for the country, which is absolutely key to our national security, and includes climate change. You're saying that document is a political document that's wrong. You're
here's what I'm saying.
The Pentagon is wrong.
Here's what I'm saying. If you think...
Yeah, of course it's a political document. You actually know how the quadrennial review is developed?
I do know how it's
political officials at the Defense Department.
But here's a simple test, and I think this is why this is a farce. You go to the Pentagon and say, I just read your review. You said this is one of the 2 greatest threats to the planet. Good. We're taking half your budget, and we're going to put half your budget into fighting global climate change. They will all of a sudden say to you, well, you know, I don't think you quite understood the way in which we wrote this, because that's a problem about 45 years from now, but this year we need 3 more ships.
But, you know, this is a budget issue. Last year, for the typhoon that hit the Philippines, we had 15,000 American troops there in relief. Yes. How do you budget for something like that? This is a problem the military actually is facing.
We're pretending that we're now adopting the totally discredited science, claim that the typhoon is caused by global warming.
We can't blame any particular weather on this, but overall the weather patterns are clear.
Joe, let me ask one other question. Last year is the first year since 1962 that no major hurricane hit the United States. None. Now, under your theory of all global climate change, it was the safest year since 1962 for hurricanes.
The scientists will tell you individual years will vary, but it's the overall trends. 10 of the warmest years on record have happened in the last 12 years. Absolutely. Something is happening here. The climate is warming. We've gone up 1 degree on average.
It's no warmer in the last 15 years.
Yeah, we're going to keep arguing about this now. When we get back, here is what Newt is absolutely missing. Any problem you're concerned about, any problem we can talk about, will get worse. As you said, under climate change, I'm going to connect the dots for you globally when we get